So we had a conversation in the car driving down to my parents a couple months ago, and I said, I have to apologize to you. I said, your years growing up, I thought you were just a stubborn kid, and we would butt heads. I knew somewhere deep down, like I would force him to sit at the piano and practice this song because
Welcome everyone to another wonderful podcast and a wonderful day. Another beautiful lady here with us today called Stephanie Hayes. Do you know what? I'm getting better, with these surnames, because remember when I first started these podcasts, I didn't have a clue. I was always stumbling, but I'm obviously doing something right. So we're looking forward to Stephanie. Welcome, Stephanie. How are you?
I am wonderful. Like I said, it's only halfway through my day, so we still have lots of energy.
Yeah, you still have lots of energy.
No, you're right. I do.
Zimmer frame for me. Zimmer frame for me. Stephanie, thank you for being with us. I really do appreciate the time you've given us. And I'm looking forward to the conversation, even though, as always, clueless Eli knows nothing about you, knows nothing about your story. I know, I told Stephanie this, that I, do this with people. We have the podcast and we just have a natural conversation, but I know nothing. And her eyebrows just went, what are you talking about? How can you do that? So let's start the conversation. Stephanie, just let us know what you do in your wonderful business to help people be successful, and we'll take it from there.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm that interesting. I certainly hope so, but here we go, right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
All right. I am a business strategist. I actually own several businesses, but in the context of what we're talking about today, I work with small business owners, solo entrepreneurs, expert businesses in that sort of mid to late 6 figures, mid 7 figures. They've built a business that is, successful, and they're kind of going it on their own and they're carrying on. And they are in a position where they've been doing this for 5-10 years, and they're kind of going, I don't know where I go from here. I don't know what I do with this business. And they're, and then I work with them on creating an exit strategy. So we don't talk about exit strategies within like the next 6 months. I mean, let's look at your business from the perspective of if you were to one day sell it or even take yourself out of the business. What does that look like? And how do we back into, the work you do with your business now to grow it to become much more valuable down the road?
That's really interesting. No, I've never had that one before. So this is why I like to have these conversations. Really interesting. Now, for you to get to that stage to be able to help entrepreneurs, businesses in this way, you've got a huge amount of experience to be able to give advice on exiting their businesses. So where did that experience start?
Well, Eli, it's the school of hard knocks.
I like it.
I was sort of born an entrepreneur. So, from the word go, I just couldn't even imagine, being the person that was sort of stuck in a job and what have you. And I worked in jobs for a little while, but really got into the startup world, the small business world, pretty much right out of university. I graduated from a degree in communication and new media, and then went right into the research park within the university and started working for a software startup. So I've been immersed in small businesses, startups, the .com industry, everything. Like the early phases of business and the building of a business was something that I was always immersed in, even though I was doing kind of other work. And so I got to see all of that from a really young age. And when I went back to school and did my master's degree, it was in the management of technology, and so it was very much about entrepreneurship and it was an MBA. So you're doing business with the perspective of technology, and technology is very much an entrepreneur's space. So just kind of grew up in the technology space, in the small business space, in the .com era, where everything was startups and everything was growing a business along with doing the work. Very early on in my 20s, one of my best most favorite jobs was incubating little businesses inside of a big internet startup. And so I got the experience of building businesses from the ground up and learning how to sell and market and, find clients and all of that stuff. So it's been sort of ingrained. Developed as a consultant and worked with big corporate environment, but also, kept my own business and building my own business, and then built a consulting company and built a software company and what have you. So I kind of like dyed in the wool entrepreneurship, and came to the place where I really wanted to kind of be out on my own, really helping as a strategist and helping businesses build themselves. So was doing that more from the perspective of business model design and strategy, and then stumbled onto this path around exits and exit strategies and selling and buying businesses about 5 years ago, and really, had this perspective that I wanted to build assets for myself, and I wanted to build something if I couldn't get back into real estate. And it just kind of evolved from there. And then the conversation that business owners is really resonating with them now is this idea that there's value in their business, that they can build a more valuable business, that they can exit, that they can sell, that they can take themselves out of their businesses. And nobody really thinks about that right now. They just continually think about, how do I make more income until I finally get tired of this and just shut it all down, right? So that breaks my heart, because everybody's got a really value in assets inside their business already, and they can really turn it into something.
Okay, so that's a huge amount of experience that you have, and that's obviously you have a natural gift in you to navigate the business world. Now, you have ADHD, and with that said, a lot of people would say, well, ADHD, how do you focus, and how do you manage ADHD? Now, you've obviously been able to do so. So what I'm going to ask you, was the ADHD something that helped you to be an entrepreneur, or was it just a pain in the ass and you just found out what tools to use to go forward?
Now that I know what I know, I would say it's actually my superpower. I would say it's actually something that, has served me. What I will say is that I got diagnosed in 2021, I believe. And I was always a high performer. I did well in school. I don't present as, I'm 50 this year. And when I was a kid growing up, ADHD was about little boys who behave badly and go on Ritalin, right? And so little girls didn't, and I certainly didn't fit the mold, and nobody would have even suspected it. But I'd gotten to a point back in sort of 2021 where I was not really able to function very well anymore, because it's I had about 3 hours a day where I could really get anything done. And then I would just be I'd have to sleep. I would be in this place where I had been in such constant negotiation inside my own brain that I just couldn't do anything. So I did go to get diagnosed, and the psychologist said to me, he's like, I'm not really sure how you're functioning as highly as you are, because there's no question in my mind. But what I had done is I had developed a lot of systems for myself, and I had developed a way of working that I actually ended up selling to my clients, because it just worked so well for me. And frankly, half my clients are ADHD as well, because entrepreneurs tend to be really good at that. But I would say that it did get to a point where it was starting to affect my ability to work and be productive. I didn't get medicated then, and I didn't have the intention of getting medicated, but I wanted to understand myself better. This year, or last year, both my kids got diagnosed, and my son has a lot of struggles, and he's now being assessed for PDA, pathological demand avoidance, which kind of goes alongside with autism and ADHD. And I wanted to know how the medication would feel and if it would help him. So I got medicated last year, and I'll tell you, it's been a game changer.
Really?
It's been an absolute game. I can work from 7 a.m. until 12 at night, and I'm still excited and raring to go, right? Because I love my work. I love everything that I do, but I just could not. I was battling my own brain for so long that it was almost impossible for me to make any sort of progress. So I would say the combination of the systems I had developed to help me function, and then the medication has been a real game changer for me.
When it comes to the medication, a lot of people that I've spoken to, they said that they've had to go through different types of medication, be it natural or other, but they've had to use a few things before they found what works for them. Were you lucky enough to find what worked for you straight away, or did you have to?
I did. What I have learned is I have to moderate some other things, but for me, I would say that the medication plus exercise is my sweet spot. I need to, for my own mental health, being physically active is, so I do powerlifting 4 days a week, and I ride my bike as many days a week as I can. Wow. But those two things, that it's like a pressure release, like it's like it just keeps everything sort of regulated. So I don't take my meds every day. I usually don't take them on the weekends unless I'm doing work. But I can't function without them, and I just, they've made me so happy and put me at peace. So I do think you do have to play. Both my kids have had to sort of play around with their prescriptions to figure out what works for them. My son is no longer on it right now. We're still trying to deal with and get him properly diagnosed with everything else. But my daughter's played with her prescription, and now she's at a place where she gets benefit from it. She's like me, like she's performs well at school, and she doesn't have any sort of polarities or anything like that, but she benefits from it for sure.
Okay, and when you saying that it got to a stage that you could only focus for about 3 hours, and then you had to find out what was wrong, why was that? Because for many years you was able to actually focus for quite some time. Is that correct, or was you always the 3-hour person?
Looking back, I see how much I was struggling, and that I would have a really hard time with certain types of work that I just couldn't get myself, like, it was always last minute deadlines. It was always, I just couldn't get myself to do it. And I realized I had a real problem with initiation, with getting started on something. So I'll say the other thing that's been really helpful for me is our AI tools. So ChatGPT or whatever you use, just getting me started on my thinking. And then as soon as that's good, then I'm good to go. But it was certain types of work. And then there was other types of work that I could do for hours and be completely lost in it, coding, or if I was doing some design work or something like that. So it sort of depended on the type of work I was doing, but I do realize, like, that certain things were just a slog, like such a struggle, and I just had the willpower and the determination to force myself to do everything at the last minute. But it was tough, but I also think that's combined with just aging and, life events, and, you're getting older and you have less tolerance and your body's breaking down, and that's natural processes. So I think it was sort of like this, everything was kind of coming together, and stress and all that sort of thing. So you got to be really careful about your environment when you are neurodivergent, because it can have a huge effect on how well you function, right?
No, totally. I mean, was you more tolerant towards things that when the creativity had to kick in, then you obviously could focus that much more because you were more dynamic in that way? Is that something that was working with your passion, or because you said certain things you could go on for hours, other things it was a real problem? So, for instance, anything creative made life easier for you, but anything more mathematical or more logical may have been difficult, or was it vice versa? No,
it's not that at all. I can immerse myself in data, and I can get stuck in data for hours and hours and hours because it's so interesting, and I have the next question I want to answer, the next question I want to answer, the
you.
next question. But even like building websites or doing design work, it's always like there's always the next thing in there, and you can see progress.
Yes.
You know, I'm a writer. I love writing, but I actually don't find it easy to sit down and start writing. When I do sit down to start writing, it comes very quickly and I can crank it out. But I did not find it easy to sit down and start writing, even though I really enjoyed it. So I don't think it was so much about what I really liked to do. Okay. It was the stimulation. Like there was always some next little stimulation. Like
so it was the progress. If you could see blatant progress, then it was a bit like the mouse trying to catch the cheese, right?
Right.
And then you could, you can always step forward.
Yeah.
So I get that. Now, with hindsight, now you're a person that knows, okay, I've got ADHD. With hindsight, looking way back in the days when you were much younger, how did that ADHD manifest? And go back as far as you can. Now you've got hindsight, right?
Yeah. It never even occurred to me that I had it until probably early, close to when I got diagnosed. It didn't even occur to me to try. Cool. But when I look back at myself as a young adult, as I was what I would call myself a stimulation junkie, right? Like I would always be doing things that were dangerous or, extreme sports or, going on road trips by myself. And if I could sleep on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere, that was exciting, right? Really? Like I would just do anything for stimulation and anything. It was just like, and that kind of wears you out after a while, right? So I noticed how much I was looking for things that were like ADHD isn't behavioral. It's a physiological deficiency in your brain, and also how your brain processes dopamine and serotonin and receptors and all that sort of thing, right? So it's not that you're just bored, or it's not like you have some mental illness. You actually have a physiological issue within your brain. And so my brain was just constantly seeking out anything that was stimulating or anything that would give me. So, in a work environment, for example, I loved being able to be the solution architect, to be up at the board, to be facilitating, to be finding solutions. But as soon as I had to walk away and put that into some type of report or whatever, like that would just kill me. Like I hated that so much. So, back in those days, we never thought about working in the ways that best suit us, right? We would just do what we were supposed to be doing. But man, it was hard. But even as a little kid, if I think about it, it was very much the same. I would always be looking for stimulation. I would always be looking for, something that was on the edge or would, create that kind of stimulation for me. But I was also a kind of I wouldn't say I was a rule follower, but I would say like I had a sense of responsibility. I always had a strong sense of responsibilities. If I had to do something, I would do it, but I'm very competitive as well. So the stimulation from the competition would force me to perform. So I decided that I was just going to get all of the awards you could get in elementary school. And so I would just do all the things to get all the awards. And I did. I got every award that you could get. It was stimulating. It was exciting.
Well, so it seems like your ADHD actually drove you ahead and pushed you forward. Yeah, you had I shouldn't say a great experience, because we all have ups and downs, right? There's pluses and negatives and whatever. But in general, when you overview your life when you was much younger, it seems like it was actually, and want for a better word, your superpower. It was something that actually drove you ahead quite well.
Yes, but I would say that looking back now, what I've finally developed for the first time in my entire life is a focus, right? So I was, what I didn't do well for myself was constantly pinballing from one thing to the next, right? Because there's a new thing for me to learn. There's a new challenge to take on. There's a new, and I noticed like I would learn all of these sports or whatever, and then I would just drop them. I would quit because as soon as I couldn't solve the problem of learning it anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember I learned how to kiteboard, and it was the hardest thing I've ever had to learn how to do. And then one day, after 4 years of taking lessons and lessons and lessons,
Yeah.
I finally realized what I was doing wrong, and I got it. And then I could be up and riding, and it was super fun. And the school finally said to me, "Can you stop taking lessons, please? Like, you know how you're doing, you know how to do it." And then I never kiteboarded again.
Ah. So it's the learning, it's the actual, as we already spoke to previously, it's the process of going from one thing to another. Trying to achieve is what really pushes you. And as soon as that achievement isn't there for you to stimulate you, it's time to walk on to the next thing.
It's achievement, but it's also problem solving. Like in most of what I do, I really love solving problems. I really like being able to, like the stimulation of being able to overcome something or find a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you're learning, that's kind of what you're doing. You're solving problems. I couldn't get myself consistently up and riding on my board. And I like, it was so frustrating.
Yeah.
But then when I finally figured it out, like it was just a little shift in my movements and a little shift in my timing. And then I was up, and then I'm like, okay, well, now what? Like, what's next? And I live in a location where I could go kiteboarding down the road, right? Like it's a huge sport here, and I never go. I have new equipment that I've never used for 3 years because I don't have to. There's nothing more for me to learn. I mean, there is, of course, you always develop your skills, but it's not the same thing, right? No. It's like, it's not achievement, it's problem solving. Because if it was achievement, then I'd be like, great, so now the next thing for me to learn in kiteboarding is this, or now I'm going to start doing jumps. It doesn't interest me. Like, it seems boring now to me.
You know what it sounds like? It sounds like you need the intensity.
Yes.
When you're learning something new, it is very intense because there's so much to learn. But once that intensity is actually done and dusted, it's not exciting no more. It's time to move on and find that other intensity.
The only place that has not shown up for me, maybe a little bit, but I've been mountain biking since I was 19, and I was an official for mountain bike racing and chief of the province and all that sort of thing. So mountain biking has been a big part of my life, and I've always just enjoyed it. Like and there is a sense of achievement, certainly, but I really, really like to go out just to ride, and I love the experience of it. Now, I find I have to put myself in containers where there is a constant milestone to move to, but it's not like with kiteboarding where I just left it. With mountain biking, I'll always go, and maybe I'll make progress that ride, or maybe I won't, right? And maybe I'll overcome a technical challenge, or maybe I won't, but it doesn't stop me from wanting to go. So there are these little things in my life that are kind of interesting in that regard, that I'll always come back to them no matter what, and I just genuinely just enjoy them. But there's definitely a sense of, like, even with mountain biking, I have this goal this year that I need to do this thing, and I like having things in containers rather than just going out for the pure fun of it.
I get that. So let's talk about your household in the way that you're ADHD, your children are ADHD. How does that work out?
I think they present differently. My daughter and I are very similar. She's very calm, very, but all three of us tend to have low tolerance for things to bother us, right? The annoying things. I'm pretty even keeled, and I stay pretty calm when it comes to, like, personal interactions and stuff. Like, I don't get angry, that kind of thing, but it's more like annoyances, and we have very little tolerance for that. So my daughter and I are constantly, like, there's F-bombs all the time, and just but then it's not like we're angry people. It's just no, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we have a pretty calm house. She's like my best friend, and we do our things, and we both give each other a lot of space. So we're not in each other's space. Like I can't handle people being in my space all the time like this. And when I had little kids, it was like,
it was intense.
Yeah. And I function by having everything in its place. Now, do I have a Martha Stewart, super clean? No, our house is lived in, our house is messy, but I know where everything is. And if something isn't where I expect it to be, it drives me mental. And so we both know that about each other, and we just respect that, and we know each other's patterns. And my son actually lives with his dad over there, and but he's very explosive.
Okay.
So he will, and that's a little bit of PDA, that's a little bit of being 14, that's a little bit of other stuff. And so when he gets frustrated, he's like that. He's hair trigger. But with all of us, even if we are a little bit of explosive energy, we also get over it really quickly, and we'll just go back to a normal conversation. So I don't know, we have a lot of fun. We're a fun family. Like even though we live in separate households, we all four of us operate as a family and function as a family, and we're at each other's houses all the time. So it's just, we have fun as a family. We're good. There's not a lot of friction in our household, and we just kind of exist. But I think we just know each other's brains really well, and we know each other in terms of what we need, and everybody knows, I can't, one of the other diagnoses I had with ADHD was misophonia. So if there's lots of people talking at once, it'll actually send me into like a rage spiral. Or like the TV on, I hate TV ads and commercials and things like that, like that kind of sound, or like power tools, or like buzzing sounds, or anything like that. And so they've had to kind of get used to that. Like they would be all in the kitchen talking at once, and I'd be like, stop. But yeah, we're all a little unique, and we all kind of respect each other's nuances. But for the most part, we're all pretty laid back, and we get along really well.
Well, it sounds like a beautiful household for sure. But you just recently found out that you was ADHD, 4 or 5 years ago? Is that correct? How many years ago now? 2021,
yeah.
Yeah. So your children, they obviously had ADHD. You didn't know they had ADHD because you didn't know you had it. So what were you thinking about your kids when they had certain issues at the time? And how difficult was it able to help support them? Because you but then again, was it difficult to support them because they were very similar to you? You had already put processes in place. Did you figure out how to support them, or what was the process of that?
My daughter's very much like me as I was a kid, and so she was always just the super smart kind of rule follower, and she just kind of, there was never any issue with her. Like, she was an easy kid. She was an easy teenager. She's an easy teenager now. She's learning how to drive. Like, there was never any issue with her. My son, I would say, he was very charming, but he was very, what I thought was stubborn. And so we would butt heads a lot, and I would get really frustrated with him. And we just had a conversation recently. Like, we've had some bigger troubles with him recently. And here's the problem, is that a lot of people see something like that and they think it's behavioral. And so for a long time, we would always be like, why is he behaving like this? Why is he, And when I finally learned about PDA, which goes along with autism and goes along with, in the UK, PDA is considered part of an autism diagnosis. But once I learned about it, and I have a friend who works in the school districts with autistic kids, and she said, I think you need to get him checked because his behavior was very much along the lines of PDA. So he's up right now for a referral to get a psych ed assessment. But I mean, it's clear to me, it's so clear. And once you start to see that, you realize that this isn't behavioral. Like, he got arrested in Halloween, and like, you realize this isn't behavioral the way he's behaving. This is actually a function. His resistance is a function of anxiety. Yeah. So he can't process the anxiety of performing, or the anxiety of whatever. And so he resists. So he will so PDA is pathological demand avoidance. It's oppositional defiance resistance, right? So he will, like, no matter what you suggest to him or you tell him, if he feels like it's a demand, he will immediately say no. He doesn't know why he's saying no, but he will say no. And it's to the extent now where, you know, he punched a hole in the wall. I mean, he's 6'1", he's a big kid, right? Okay. And so he punched a hole in the wall. His hand was bleeding. He was yelling. And his dad had sent me a text. And so I called him and I said, what's going on? And he says, well, because we pulled him out of school. So he's doing online school. And he said, my teacher sent me an email asking if I wanted to set up a meeting to if I had any questions. And I said, that's a big reaction, punching a hole in the wall too. Like, what's that about? And he's like, you know, as much as I do. He's like, I don't know. Like, he can't even tell you himself. Okay. There's no logical reason why you would respond like that to something so innocuous, but he did. And it comes from the anxiety of feeling like, well, what's going to happen? Am I going to be told I'm not doing a good job? Am I going to be told, like, you know, whatever it is? So once you start to see those things, as, you know, the night he got arrested, it was kind of the turning point for me, where I saw this, like, the struggle he was in mentally. This wasn't normal, right? This wasn't like, he takes responsibility for anything that he does. It's not an issue. It's that he was talking about how much he hates himself and how he can't, he just can't regulate. Yes. He can't regulate. He needs co-regulation. And that's very much another function of PDA. So it was a real game changer for me, but I'm so sad that I didn't see this in him until he's 14, right? But what I did see, I saw the ADHD for years, because I would constantly be trying to get him support in the classroom. Of course. And the teacher would just say he was disruptive, but really he was just funny, right? Like, he was funny, and because he can't go, like, I work with him on his schoolwork now. Okay. I sit with him, and the only way he can do it is if someone sits with him, reads him the thing, explains it to him, and then we get started. And as soon as he gets started, he's off to the races. Like, he's very smart, he's intelligent, he can do all these things. He pulls off the stuff at his quality, but he cannot go from zero instruction, right, to working on it. Yes. And so no teacher has ever been able to support him, has ever had the desire to support him, has ever understood what he needs. And I thought by getting a diagnosis that he would start getting that support at school, but in fact he got quite the opposite. Oh, really? And the school just started, you know, brushing him off as a bad kid and getting angry at him and everything. And he got so frustrated and just, like, then he just gave up. So he didn't go to school. He didn't do his classwork. Like, he couldn't get any sort of support that he needed. So I'm hoping we can get more of a diagnosis and really get some recognition for what he needs. But I know what he needs. Like, I'm the only person who seems to be able to work with him and get him his schoolwork done. He's very intelligent, and he looks at this stuff and he's like, you know, why am I doing this? Like, it's so silly. Like, it doesn't mean anything, right? Yes. So he needs meaning. I need meaning. He needs meaning. He needs something to be meaningful. He needs something to have, like, to make sense to him. Otherwise, he doesn't see the reason to do it. And I'm the same way.
Stephanie, I really feel him, because I was very similar when I was a child, and the support wasn't there for me. And it was... it sounds very similar to what he's going through, what I went through, and it just wasn't supported, and I felt frustrated, and times I didn't go to school, and etc. And for you it must be really, really difficult, because with your daughter you can see your habits, the way you are, so you found out how you could support your daughter. But when it came to your son, that must have been really difficult for you, because there wasn't, like I say, you didn't have something to go by, because as you grew up, you knew what you was like. Your daughter grew up, well, it's very similar. And so it took a bit more time with you to find out what you could do to support him, which wasn't your fault. It's just that you was using a different point of view, right?
I had a conversation with him it had gotten to the point where I was just feeling desperate with him a few months ago, and I didn't know what to do for him. I didn't know how to break through to him. And when I started to learn about PDA, I was like, oh, this is my answer for sure. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized like this isn't behavioral. So we had a conversation in the car driving down to my parents just like a couple months ago, and I said, I have to apologize to you. I said, all your years growing up, I thought you were just a stubborn kid, and we would butt heads. I knew somewhere deep down, like I would force him to sit at the piano and practice this song because he would just shut down and not do it. Even though I knew he could, but what I knew is that if I got him if I wore him down to the point where he would actually do it, he would all of a sudden realize he could, and then he would be so happy and he would be like, oh, look what I did. But if I let him quit, if I let him keep quitting, he would reinforce this story that he can't do something, that it's not possible for him to do something. And so that was hard because it was it felt like a lot of friction, and he would be crying and he would be upset and I would persevere. And like, anyway, what I said to him in the car is I said, like, I really have to apologize to you. I didn't understand you. It's really valuable to me when I feel known, and I feel like I haven't known you, and that must feel really hard for you. And I said, I think you've got something going on called PDA. And I described it to him, and he sat and he listened quietly. And I said, I think this may explain, because I don't think even you can understand why you feel the way that you do and you react the way that you do to certain things. And I said, does this make sense to you? Does this seem to feel like something? He goes, yeah, it really does. And up until that point, I had been trying to get him into a counselor because, he had all these mental health issues going on and whatever. And he said, no. He wouldn't go. He's 6'1". He's a big guy. I can't force him to go and do anything. But I guess I was saying, why do you keep saying no? Like, this is to help you. And he's like, no. And it was just resistance because it was anxiety. And so when we sat and we talked about, he said to me, it's okay. Like, I understand, like, you don't have to apologize. I said, no, but I do. And then that just changed something, and that opened it up. And all of a sudden, I think he started to feel like somebody knows him and somebody's like learning about him as a human being. Yeah. And I explained what PDA was. And I said, this changes the conversation from, are you behaving badly, to why, like, what do we do to reduce your anxiety? And I said, I would really like to get you to a counselor or get you to the pediatrician and get an assessment done. He said, yeah, absolutely. And he goes, why didn't you ask me that before? And I said, well, I did. Anyway, but for him, it felt like an answer, right? It felt like something that could maybe, because, I remember him saying to me that night when he was brought home by the police, he was just in a totally dysregulated state. And he said to me, I had this plan. Want to do it myself. Like, he wanted to prove that he could get himself out of this place. And the poor little guy, like, he had this whole plan where he was going to clean himself up and have everything good by the time he went into high school next year. And he felt like such a failure because here he had screwed it up again. He'd gotten in trouble with the police or whatever. And I just was like, but I don't think you can't do this yourself. Like, you need some. And I think it was at that moment that he realized that this isn't about him being capable. This is about something that's actually not functioning correctly. And now this could be released, right? This could be, and our conversations have become softer. That weekend, he was just lovely with my parents. He was super, like, sweet and like cognizant of how they're struggling on their own, but he was very engaging with that. Like, it was just a real turnaround. Now we still have struggles and what have you, but now that I know this, I can see what he needs. And we have this routine now where he comes over and he works with me on his school stuff. And, I still can't get him to do everything that he needs to do. And he still doesn't really care about it. But it's funny because he'll sit there for an hour listening to all of the teaching, but not really listening. And he looks like he's half asleep and he couldn't care less and whatever. And I'll be frustrated because I'll be like, you're not listening to me. He's like, I am. And then I'll say, well, this is the assignment that we have to do. He's like, okay, well, let me do it right now. And I'm like, but you haven't been listening. And then he'll sit there and he'll rattle it off and he'll do like a really good assignment. And he'll have heard everything and he'll have all the references. And he needs a little bit of help, but that's just his style. Like, that's just how he is. And imagine trying to be in a normal classroom like that. Like you have to follow these orders and you have to follow this pattern and you have to like function in this way, and he can't. It's not how he works, right? That's just not how he is. So, you know, it's been a really interesting. This is all very, very new. So who knows what we'll get, but we'll see. We'll get a referral to the pediatrician and we'll get him assessed and we'll see what comes out of that. But yeah, it was a real like revelation.
Yeah, it's real difficult. I mean, he can't be stuck in a box. I feel the same way. Once you feel like you're trapped, it's very stifling. Do you know what I mean? But you've actually brought him out of that because he understands that you've tried to understand him, and you gave out the olive branch, and he's taken that, and now you're in a position that you can communicate in a wonderful way. So he's still got some way to go still. He's still going to go through the doctor and everything else, but at least you feel, and you've done the best as a mother, and that you needed to do, and he feels protected and loved, and you know, and he feels like there's a safe place for him to communicate with you, right?
That's a huge thing about feeling known and feeling, I mean, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of our greatest needs is to be known, to be in community, right? And when he was floating through this, I think he was just living in shame and just this spiral of being afraid of not doing something right or not knowing how to do something or looking stupid or whatever. And he's a very confident kid. And he, you know, if he knows you well, he's almost like arrogant, but he's like in a funny way, and he's very charming. When he's around people he doesn't know, or when he's around especially adults that he doesn't know, he clams up and he's introverted to the point of almost being scared.
Really? Has he always been like this?
Not when he was super little, but like there were some friends of ours that were really good friends of ours, lived right across the street from us. They were like grandparents to him, and not quite old enough to be total grandparents, but that sort of age. And we made a habit of seeing each other all the time, even after we moved away. Like, so they were really, really good friends of mine. And he came over, they hadn't seen him in a few years. And so for him, he was now 14, and he was now like conscious of himself. And he came over to their house for dinner one night, and she's a very outgoing, like dominant personality. And she didn't like that he was there completely clammed up, like a very silent. He was to the point where we would be standing there and he would turn to me to speak for him because he was so shy about being there. And she didn't get that, which is funny because she used to be a teacher. She didn't get that. She didn't understand it. She was just looked at him and said he was being rude. And then she would like go at him and she would say, "Get off your phone. Why are you on your phone?" And he's just like, you could see him panicking. Plus her granddaughter was there who's like roughly the same age as him. And so it made him feel a little bit more. And so it was really uncomfortable. And he would look to me to answer questions that she would ask to him. So it's not like he was being rude. He was literally fearful. Like he was super, super shy. So when we left, she sent me all these messages saying how she was so insulted and how he was so rude to her and she would not have that in her house. And I'm like, I guess we're just not coming over anymore. Like it was so, and I think what he saw there was that I stood up for him and I was like, I'm sorry, but you can't treat my son like that. Like, I'm trying to explain to you that this wasn't rudeness. This wasn't behavior. This was him being very, very shy. And then she just went off about it. And I said, okay, I guess we're not spending any more time together. So
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, and it was really disappointing, but it was just another insight into him and the complexity around, you know, whatever it is and we still have a long way to go to sort of learn about him more, but he needs to learn about himself and he needs to better understand and have words for what these feelings are that come out and his, you know, how he responds to them and how he behaves.
It's been a long journey and the journey still carries on. So But you being who you are, you're the best person to help him along his path. So well done, Stephanie. You're doing
right now, hopefully, but I don't feel like I've been incredibly successful.
Well, you have been successful because remember, he's now communicating with you. He's now settled a bit more. He's not so aggressive. He's starting to understand himself because of the conversations you've been having. And you're still taking the path. It's still the way to go. But the point is, there is changes and positive changes. It just takes time, and you already know that. But with you being so stubborn to make sure that you'll do the best you can towards your son, no matter what, he's now feels a bit more secure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we're making little bits of progress, and I think that we still have to learn and we still have to figure this out. But I also think it's also a really tough time in life, right? Hormones and
of course
figuring out who you are as a person. And he's depending a lot on cannabis right now. He got really stuck on weed, and that I think that was his way of regulating, because he's just totally dysregulated. He cannot. Christmas Eve, he was up, he couldn't sleep, and so I was up with him all night trying to regulate him, because he would be punching the walls and yelling because he was so frustrated that he couldn't get to sleep because he was excited and whatever, right? So it does manifest itself in really difficult ways, but that's a huge part for him, is he just has no tools to be able to regulate himself. So hopefully as we get these diagnoses and we get more help for him, he's gonna be able to find ways to do that, and not through the use of cannabis. But at the same time, I'm if that's what I'm dealing with right now, that's what I'm dealing with. And if that's how he's finding ways to regulate himself, I don't love it, and it's not good for him, and we want to get him off of it, but one step at a time, right?
Of course. And so you've been going through so much in the last 4 years of your daughter, your son, yourself, and a successful business. And that's not easy at all. But you've been doing it to great effect. So when it comes to your business, just let me know, how do you help your clients from the point of view, okay, you help them with the business, those individual clients, but do you also help people from the point of view group meetings, seminars, or you obviously do one-to-ones? What does that look like? How do you help them in depth?
Yeah. In my strategy business, it's mostly one-on-one. I do have a group program that I've launched just to founding members, and then I'll be opening it up shortly too. But that's really very much focused on business strategy and evolution. I bought a business 2 years ago that is where I'm coaching earlier stage entrepreneurs and virtual assistants, freelancers, and that sort of thing. So that gets into a lot more mindset-y stuff, and how you think about yourself as an entrepreneur, and how you move through all the mindset stuff and move through all of the challenges that come up when the way what you're thinking, because the doing part is actually the easy part. It's how you move from into belief that this is something good. That's a big part of entrepreneurship, is believing that it's possible.
And also it's being consistent too, and that's a mindset situation. That's difficult for the consistency part, right? It's building that habit and having the confidence just to keep on going straight, keep on going on. So you've got two things happening. So you've got the startups, solopreneurs, etc. And also you've got you're dealing with people that obviously already got their businesses that are very successful. And you found obviously that's a completely different mindset, and you have to treat them completely different in that way.
Just different stages. It all comes back to the same stuff, but my one-on-one clients tend to be a little bit further along, and so the conversations we're having are a little bit more elevated, and the mindset issues are a little bit more complex and nuanced. Whereas in the VA business, it's all group coaching, and it's it's like very early stage, rudimentary, just believing that you can do it and taking consistent action. And, we talk about the same things a lot, like over and over again there. Whereas with my one-on-one clients, these are successful business owners. They're in high 7 figures, and they're now what we're dealing with is more shifts in how they see themselves. And for them to make a big step from kind of what I've been doing to where I want to go, they have to see themselves as different people, or they have to see how they're being differently as opposed to what they're doing, what they have and how they're being versus am I focusing on the strategy and the tactics, right?
Do you know what? The reason why I love doing this podcast, because I try to show people you could be neurodivergent and be successful. And obviously we're talking about mindset, right? And the majority of people, when they're neurodivergent, they're all over the place, which I'm the same way, unless you've got certain techniques or tools to focus. And you think to yourself, how can I do these things? How can I? But with people like yourself coming on here, showing that you can be neurodivergent, you can be ADHD, autistic, etc. It is possible, and we're great leaders because of what we have. 100%. You just got to understand what to accept. Your acceptance is first of all. If you don't accept, you cannot change. You cannot, actually focus and use those powers in a particular way. And well, I believe that anyway. If you don't accept, then you cannot make those changes. And I was one of those people that I didn't accept except in the last few years. And as soon as I accepted what was going on, I can make the changes. But it takes time. So, and you're perfect to show that, yes, you're neurodivergent, your children are, but you're successful. You have your ups and downs, you have your problems. It's not perfect. And by any means, it's not perfect.
No, very not.
But it's to show you can get to your goals. You can be successful. And successful doesn't mean you have to be a millionaire. It doesn't mean that you have to have 100,000. It just means you've got to get to your goal, right? Be successful to that goal. You can do the things that you want to do. Would you agree to that?
I do. And I also think that a big part of that and a lot of the work that I do with my clients is getting them out of the mindset that they have to do it like everyone else, or that they have to be like everyone else, or they have to, they like the things that they measure themselves by. It has to, anybody's business, I don't care if you're neurodivergent or you're not, anyone's business has to be fully aligned to who they are as an individual before they can be successful in building it. And so, it's like allowing yourself to be different, or allowing yourself to have a business that, serves who you are as an individual. Quite frankly, that's great strategy. And it's also really helpful when you're neurodivergent, because you can understand yourself better and you can build that business around what you need.
It's true. That flexibility, just what is needed. So with that said, how can people contact you if they need the support for them to be supported?
Best place to find me is at stephaniehayes.biz. I'm most active on LinkedIn. If you can find my link there, or just search me up on LinkedIn, but those are the two places that you're most likely to find me and be in touch, and super happy to have a conversation. Most of my clients are neurodivergent.
So listeners, as you can hear, her journey has been long, arduous at certain times, but still successful. She understands what's needed for success to be taken. She's been a long-going entrepreneur, and she's human. Look what's happening with her family life, but she's still stringent. She will not let anything stop her children being successful, and she does the same thing with her clients in the business. So if she resonates with you, why not make that phone call? It's a very easy thing to do.
Don't call me. I don't like to talk on the phone. Just send me an email.
Oh my God, she doesn't like to talk on the phone. Okay, well, you contact her anyway. She won't bite, not yet anyway. But she will support you, and support you well, as you can see and hear at the same time. And so, Stephanie, thank you for your time, and thank you for being open about your family life at the same time, so people can
Thank you so much,
understand.
Amy.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thank you for sharing
I
your
appreciate
time.
it.
And in the meantime, listeners, subscribe, like, and all those other wonderful things. And sayonara.